of participating on a city advisory committee, board, or commission. So they really wanted to provide a program to really help you be able to participate in our advisory committees a lot, to help offset that cost. So my job with the stipend program, I'm kind of more of the back piece where I distribute the cards to your staff liaison. So I give Michaela give the cards, but I wanted to kind of walk through the process of kind of what is involved in our stipend program. Let me pull up my notes here. This is a brand new program, so bear with me. We just started last month. Our first committee to receive it was in July. So we're really excited to get this program started. It's been, oh gosh, and you probably heard them talking about this months and months and months ago. But in December 2021, we had an internal working group that began really trying to address the need to reduce barriers for our community to participate in our advisory boards, in our committees and commissions. So the group comprised of some of our city council members, our legal team, our human resources, our equity department, and other supporting staff like our city recorder and our communications department. And so then on May 4th of 2022, that's when the city council voted and adopted the ordinance approving this into play, and kind of what the program details include. So the stipend amount will be $40 per month, or per meeting, excuse me, let me take that back, virtually or in person. It cannot exceed by state rule $500 to maintain a volunteer liability protection plan. The advisory body members will have an option. You don't have to choose to get the stipend. You will have an enrollment form to fill out at your first NLA meeting, and there is an option that you can check that box and you don't have to receive any of the funds. We've had some members from a couple of our different committees so far opt out of the program, which is totally fine. The cool thing is that later on down the road, if you do opt out of our program, you can always choose to opt back in. So that's a cool aspect of the program. The eligible boards, committees, and commissions that are and this is a pilot program, and what we're kind of focusing on right now is our the council appointed committees. So the Accessibility Committee, Affordable Housing, Urban Economic Development Program, and so on and so forth. And the NLA is included in that. So that's kind of an overview of the program. Michaela will have, every meeting will have a sign-in sheet for you all to fill out. And she will make sure that you get your stipend cards if you choose to stay in the program. And that will continue until you reach your $500 max. So that's kind of an overview of that program. Do any of you have any questions or any concerns at the moment?
If we decline it, where does the money go?
It's the money that doesn't get used. I
It
don't.
goes on the general fund then, or?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ann. I didn't know the logistics when it came to the money. That's more of our finance department, and but yes, in our general fund. Okay, so next we have a new parking permit process.
Oh, sorry, Kayla, to interrupt. Shannon, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, Shannon. I'm just jumping ahead.
No, that's right. I was not able to unmute quickly enough. So do we have to opt in or out, and how do we do that?
So everybody is opted in right away when once the program starts for your committee, you will have to check that opt out box.
Yeah, so it's another part of the enrollment form, which I'll have at our next meeting for everyone to fill out. There's a little box at the bottom of it that says I choose not to receive this stipend.
Any more? Okay, cool. So if many of you, many of you are probably aware of our downtown and our parking. It's definitely changed over the last probably year or so. We do now have an option where our committee members can get a parking pass for their committee meetings, free of charge. And Michaela, did you send them the form? So I sent Michaela the step-by-step process. You will need to set up an account through the system the city uses. It's called Passport. The city employees use it, and even the committee members who are just purchasing a basic parking pass for the day. So the link on the sheet that Michaela sent you will take you directly to that setup form. You'll set up an account, and then your committee parking pass should show up. If you have any complications, please let Michaela know, because it is a newer program. We will be having I've already had one committee member who's been having some issues get on. So please share any feedback you may have, because Tobias Marks, who is our parking manager, would love to receive any feedback. So I don't have much on this. It's just setting up that account, taking advantage of that free pass. The cool thing is I believe that it's once you sign up for this pass, it's a year. So you don't have to worry about signing in every single month that you have your meeting. I know sometimes meetings do go a little longer, so I definitely suggest taking advantage of this program. So that is all I have. Do you have any questions about the parking?
Where is that parking for?
There should be Michaela, did I send you a map too?
Yeah, so I included this in an NLA update, but I will also send it out again after tonight's meeting.
Okay.
It'll include the instructions on how to access that pass.
Thanks.
And it's a step-by-step. The instructions are very step-by-step. It even has pictures and everything. So it shouldn't be too complicated. All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kayla. You're free to go. You don't have to hang around. So.
Awesome. Well, if you guys have any questions, like I said, let Kayla know and she'll pass them along to me.
Yes.
Thanks, Kayla.
You guys have a great evening.
Thank you. All right. Moving along, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance documents, the guiding documents for the committee. So I'm going to pull up my screen here and then we can get started. All right, are you able to see my slide?
Yep.
Perfect. So starting out with like mission, vision, and strategy, the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance is able to put together a strategic plan. And in the past, what we've done is align that with the biennium for the council. So that means that these are 2-year plans. So the cycle that we are currently in is July 2021 through June of 2023. So we are coming up on the tail end of that biennium, which means you're coming on board when we've done a lot of the work that's within our strategic plan, but we also have a little bit more to go. So today I'll walk you through some of those documents. My hope is that when you get to the meeting in September, you don't feel like you're completely behind and not knowing where we're at with some of the projects that we have for the committee. So the vision and the mission are there on the screen for you. Just to keep in mind, this is really what we used as a committee to form the strategic plan. Those are our guiding phrases, if you will, and something that we reference quite often as a committee. And then I have 3 goals on the screen, which those are the 3 goals that the committee decided to focus on for this biennium. So the first is to serve as a resource to city council and neighborhoods on matters of community interest. The second is to work with city staff to create processes and opportunities that help increase community engagement, specifically the participation of underserved communities within our neighborhoods. And then the third goal is to continue as a conduit for meaningful public engagement between committee members, the city staff and city council. So those are really high level guiding goals that we have. In the handbook, you can look into more of the specifics of each of those goals or visioning statements, which I would say fall under each of these. The way that we created these goals is actually in accordance to how City Council creates theirs. So you may know City Council every 2 years, they will hold a listening session for their council goals, which they're trying to put together for the upcoming biennium. And this next slide that I have here actually has we called it the Domino's Pizza Tracker, but also it's the City Goals Council Tracker. So as we hit each of these steps in the last year, we would highlight them and put it out to the community so that they knew where we were at within the goal setting process, because as you can see, it does take quite a bit of time to set goals for the next 2 years. So what you're looking at is how City Council selects their goals. There's a variety of inputs that they use to create those goals. It's community surveys, feedback sessions with advisory committees like the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. Neighborhood associations are also invited to come and present their ideas at goal setting meetings. There are that section of like council inputs is usually taken between November and December. And you guys are unique in a sense that we are coming up on the opportunity to start this process once more. So you know that we have elections coming this November, and then we will be doing this all over again. So easy for you to know kind of what's coming down the pike and how we can be involved with this goal setting process.
So does council inputs mean inputs from committees?
Yeah, and I took that slide out and now I'm wishing I would have included it. But there are a variety of council inputs. That's what I was referencing a second ago with the community surveys that they do, the listening sessions, the submitted comment to council. So they're taking all of those things into consideration as they're deciding which goals are priorities for these communities or for this community. So as they're going through that process of distilling the input that they're getting and coming up with the council goals, we waited this last session, we waited until in between the 2-year work plan. So between March and June, that was when they were figuring out really what those goals were going to be and the strategies specifically within them, and then adopting a budget to go along with that. So the reason that we waited to that time was so that we had a better idea of what council was doing, so we could align our strategic plan with what they were hoping to accomplish from us. And the reason we do that is because there's a lot of projects within the council goals that the NLA might be asked to help with. So we need to know what our workload is going to be before we can add a bunch of other projects and interests that we wanted to work on. So once that process was completed, the circle on the left is actually the council goals, the council goal categories that were created for this biennium. I put there just so that you can see what action areas were included. The NLA is going to be a part of wildfire risk planning, fireworks ban, unsanctioned camping code, neighborhood street safety program. Those top buckets are all things that coincide with council goals and that we know that we're going to be working on because of those goals. That's our top priority. The bottom, or the bucket on the bottom, is the not included, and that's where those passion projects come in from the neighborhood association. So that's the things that they said, we really think these are citywide issues that we want to focus on. So the NLA chose to include those within their strategic plan. So you can see there's kind of a hierarchy of needs when it's an advisory committee. Our purpose is to advise council on their goals and programs and policies, but we do have a little bit of opportunity to do things that are important to the neighborhood associations if they aren't captured within the council goals. Does that make sense? Okay. Trying to simplify a very complicated process, so understand if questions come up later on too. So with that in mind, I'm going to take us over to our action plan and the roadmap. So our action plan is a document that the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance uses, and that takes each of our 3 goals and it breaks it into specific action items that we want to accomplish under each of those goals. Now I have to reshare my screen, so just a second. Okay, try this. I don't know what I'm gonna do without Kayla because she's the one that usually does this. So we'll break down into each of these goals. So obviously goal 1, that serve as a resource to city council and the neighborhoods on matters of community interest. So within these, we broke out areas or strategies rather that we wanted to pursue to accomplish that goal. And then within each of those strategies is a few action items that we intend on doing as a committee in order to reach the goal in the end. So under this first one, you'll see land use education was a big focus actually under the last biennium of goals. So the NLA has been around now for about 6 years formally. And so we've had 2 council opportunities to figure out what our goals are going to be and work on these projects. Last biennium, which was 19 to 21, we focused on land use education, and that was one of the biggest projects that the NLA has had to date. And that was, it came to us as a suggestion from the neighborhood associations that we brought to council, and we said, this is something that we find there's a lot of confusion within the committee or community. People don't understand what land use is. They see bulldozers in the property next door, and then that's when they choose to come to the neighborhoods and to come to the city. And at that point, it's much too late to do anything. And so how can we get in front of those issues and make sure that the community is aware of what's happening and how they can participate in that process? And so we spent 2 years as a committee putting together all of these documents and resources that the community could use to learn about land use. And one of those was a video. I can share that page with you, but it's the Learn About Land Use page, which is on the city's website. That's a product of the NLA. So within this year's council goals, we included it. It's mostly wrapped up at this point, but we did have it. It needs maintenance. It needs people to tell us if it's working and what we're still missing. And so that is why we chose to include it in our strategic plan this year. Status update for you is that we recently hired a communications coordinator who's going to be working on this project and take it over. So we'll have a regular staff member that's going to be contributing their time to land use education, which is really incredible because before it was like we created these documents, but no one else, we don't have anyone to continue to run them and make sure they're working. So as I said, it's exciting. We just hired that person and they are currently onboarding. So I anticipate that later this fall, we'll be talking about maybe re-looking at that land use plan so that we can figure out where there's some gaps, where the tools are working really well. We did some surveys to figure out if the resources were helpful. So we'll be getting into that later this fall. And I guess for you to know is that we have not currently taken that on at this time. Under B, we have worked with the city to address neighborhood safety issues. So again, last biennium, we had the opportunity to help with the rollout of a new program called the Neighborhood Street Safety Program. That program was actually very successful. It had originally a small bucket of funding that they said, we're going to pilot this and see how well it works. And then we'll reevaluate it and see if we want to continue. There was $800,000 and the neighborhoods were able to work through a grant process to select 25 projects throughout the city focused on residential street safety. So your crosswalks, traffic calming, any of those small residential street safety projects they could submit. And then we were able to fund all of those because the program was so successful that we passed the transportation system plan. Transportation Go Bond. And when I say we, that is we as the citizens of Bend who voted on the Go Bond in the last election. So the role of the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance in this is really to help with the giving out the rest of that funding. We started with 800,000 and the bond allows us to have up to 9 million. We are going to be a part of that because we helped with the design of the original program. And again, that's not something that we have tackled yet as a committee and is supposed to come to this fall to like start having those conversations. We also focused a lot on data, which you'll see in here, the reference to the citizen service requests. Was one where neighborhoods wanted to know what kind of requests were coming in from our neighbors and had they been responded to. So we actually did get a cool new tool that allows us to see that. I'm going to announce the 2021 tool here in the next month, I think, in my newsletter. So since you are part of the NLA, you'll be added to my email list. I send out once a month a newsletter for the neighborhood leaders that has information that you can share with your members or information that your board could use or these kind of tools. So I'll include it in that. Anything yet? I know it's kind of a lot of information all at once. So, okay. The third action under neighborhood safety issues was to create a coordinated process for passing along timely safety information between neighborhood associations in the city. That's not something that we've done yet as a committee. Again, we have a group called Policies and Procedures, and we, during the pandemic and after the land use project, we stopped having these working groups, and we'll learn about them later. That we can restart them to accomplish projects. With the policies and procedures, it is up to the chair on whether we put that on the agenda for the entire committee to talk about, or if we are going to take care of it in a smaller working group with just a few of the members of the NLA, who can then like make a recommendation to the entire committee. So again, that's another one that we have yet to take action on. Number 4 is to support collaborative wildfire resiliency education efforts, including fire evacuation planning. We did formerly have one representative. It was actually Sean McFadden. So Shannon, that is the representative that you took the place of. He was on the wildfire resiliency committee, steering committee. So they were having conversations about those planning. That was delayed and is still delayed because the state is working on some planning efforts that would have impacted what that group was coming out with. So that's been put on hold until the state is done with their state or Senate bill. I think that's going through. And then number 5, support the city's efforts discouraging the use of illegal fireworks. That is something that we did accomplish. So in December of last year, the city council passed a ban for fireworks citywide. And a lot of that was because the neighborhood associations had asked for help with illegal fireworks and then wanted further support because of the high risk of wildfire that we have in this area. And noise complaints, obviously, for pets and veterans alike. So that was an initiative that we worked on and were able to see through. C, which is the last one under the first goal, is to continue the review of neighborhood association boundaries to ensure effective representation. I feel like these are all on hold as we're going through them, but this is one. Neighborhood boundaries have come up time and time again. If you are on the outskirts of the city in a neighborhood that borders that, which Cody, Shannon, you definitely are. Old Farm, you're there too. So our boundaries are expanding as a city, and we don't have a great process for those new areas to be included in neighborhoods. And so that's a project that we are probably going to be working on probably in the next biennium. And the reason that I say next biennium is because we had it on our list, but we also did a lot of other work that told us that we need more resources than we currently have to complete that goal. So we're going to be asking for council to prioritize that in the next set of council goals. So under goal 2, this is the work with city staff to create processes and opportunities so that we're reaching those underserved communities. The first item under this one was to work with the city to assess the neighborhood system. So I alluded just a second ago to the work that we've done that's told us a lot about the neighborhood associations. This year, one of the big projects was a neighborhood association assessment. And that was where I went out to the neighborhood associations and asked, how's this program working? We are here as your partners to support you, but we need to know where the gaps are. So is there issues with the neighborhood programs that we need to look at? And maybe that's how we're using communications funding, the requirements the city's putting on neighborhoods, like what are those areas? And there's a lot of information about that, which is probably a conversation for another day. But this is a project that is currently almost complete. So we're coming up on the tail end where we've gathered all of this great information. We know what needs to be fixed, and now staff is putting together recommendations on how we can change the program to be more successful. B is to educate and communicate the importance and roles of the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. This is really focusing on getting the word out there. One of the things we learned from the assessment is that people really don't know what neighborhood associations are or what their purpose is. And so we have goals to go to as many community events as we can, put up a table, talk to people about what neighborhood associations do. I'm doing that as staff, but the NLA is helping me identify what those opportunities are. So we've definitely done a lot to this date. Of going to Bend 101 events and Leadership Bend alumni events and getting people signed up with neighborhood associations through that way. We also are working to engage our community partners. So the city hired Zavi Bora, who is the other community relations manager. His focus, like mine is with the neighborhoods, is with our community partners. So he's working with a lot of underrepresented groups like our Spanish speaking communities, veterans, and more. So he's really our connection with those groups. And that relationship has allowed us to bridge the work between community partners and neighborhoods. Again, we're looking for every opportunity we can to collaborate with them. So one of the examples of that was the most recent Alpenglow Park opportunity, which Old Farm helped with, or really spearheaded as far as neighborhood associations go, with Bend Parks and Rec and the city of Bend and community partners. And there was 2,000 people there. We were able to really bring the community out, and it was a great opportunity for them to learn about neighborhoods and to meet their neighbors and really build community. So trying to do more of that. And then I think I missed the first one. So supporting identifying opportunities between neighborhood associations and the NLA. One of the examples of that, this is kind of like an ongoing project. So I can't say that any of these things are just completed, because I think we'll continue them through the years. But we definitely worked with the houseless strategies topic and the neighborhood associations. The NLA can't really hold informational gatherings for the community because we are an advisory committee, and our role is to advise council on their programs and policies. But we know something huge is coming down the line, like the shelter code, which was related to houselessness and where we should put shelters within the city. So we were able to help work with the neighborhood associations to inform them of that. And then they were able to put together community events and town halls so that folks could learn about that and provide feedback to the city. And then the last goal is goal 3. This is just really administrative, continuing to be a conduit for meaningful public engagement. And the goals under here really are aspirational in a sense of like, they're not metric based. These are things that we need to focus on as we are submitting letters to council. We need to be aware of the impacts that our comments are having. We need to understand policy matters. So we're showing up to our meetings and we are prepared. We read the agenda beforehand. We have talked to our boards about what's happening, and we're bringing feedback to the table so that the NLA can discuss that. We're also working on really buffing up the resources that we have for you as committee members. So the handbook is a new one that was created just earlier this spring for the first time. This orientation, this is the first time we've done like a full in-depth orientation to bring people up to speed. Or new representatives up to speed before sending you in to be a representative. So that's really what we've been working on, putting together best practices and then supporting additional opportunities for engagement, just using what we can. So again, those informational sessions, there's a state bill coming down called Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities. That's something that the NLA knew about and really encouraged council to work on a public information session so that people knew what was coming. Because it's not here yet, here as in with the city to implement, it's more on the state's plate still. The neighborhoods were able to work with the state to bring an informational session to the community. So even though the city couldn't necessarily help with that, they were able to get the information out early. And then yes, D, continuing to build and improve upon the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance processes and structure. So that is those handbook that I was talking about, the handbook development, the succession planning, onboarding. I'm not going to lie, we've had a hard time keeping leadership and keeping people on the NLA. I think it's a lot of work. It's 2 hours a month, but there's some in-between homework that has to happen, as well as communicating with boards. And so I'm here to help you with that as much as you can, or as much as I can, and as much as you need. We do have a candidate, if you did see the NLA update that I had sent out, Morgan Schmidt from Larkspur has offered to nominate herself for the chair role at least through January. And so in September, we'll be doing nominations and voting. It's not too early for a new representative to step into that role. We represent what our neighbors want. And so I know it may be intimidating, but that's open to you guys as well. So don't feel like you're out when we ask for nominations in September. Yes, Shannon.
Why did the previous chair and vice chair exit?
Yeah, so Summer Sears was the previous chair. She was with Orchard District, and she resigned due to personal reasons and just not being able to keep up with the additional meetings. And being the chair, you do have to go to some check-ins and represent the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. So it's a little bit more of a commitment than a regular representative role. And she had some family stuff that came up and she just couldn't do it anymore. And the vice chair, Kathy Roche, Cody's actually taking her place right now. She termed out in July. So her term was just ending, and she's also, I don't know if she's leaving or I know she was planning on traveling some, so she didn't think she could commit the time to the NLA.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it for the action report, and these are all available to you. Again, I'll send out an email afterwards with these resources so that you know, so that you have them at your disposal. The other form that I wanted to share with you was the let's see, roadmap for the NLA. So this is going to look scary at first, and I'm going to let you go through it on your own. But this is a spreadsheet that the NLA uses to map out where we're at with each of these goals. So just to orient you, on the far left side, these are all of those goals that we just talked about. Facilitate land use education plan, the create the neighborhood handbook, those kind of things are all included on this side. And then along your horizontal axis is the months. So these are what we're doing each of these months on each of those projects. So you can see where we're at with them. There's obviously indicators of how well we're doing on those. So green is complete, yellow says needs attention, and then red is it's either been canceled or it's behind. And we need to talk about that as a committee. So this is updated every month so that you have the most recent progress on each of these things. And I believe we're going to start revisiting it at the end of every meeting so that we can better plan our agendas and our focus moving forward. Ugh, I'm talking so much. Let me see. Wow. If I remember what was going on.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, of course.
Let's see. So I went through your spreadsheet earlier, and combining information. I think that I heard that the city council goal setting process starts. They kind of council inputs to the council happen November, December, right?
Yeah, Anne is here actually, and she might have a better idea about when those community surveys are going to start.
We'll do a statistically valid community survey between November and December, like after elections, but before the end of the year. So that probably would get presented to council early January. Last year, we had kind of a unique listening session related to policing policies, and it was meant to feed into council goals. We did that, I think, in December also. When the committees really have a formal structure for showing up at a meeting, that usually starts January, February. So early in the next year.
So January and February is when the
When
NLA
you guys would be likely to show up
would
and
be-
have your input.
okay.
Yeah.
So we have September, October, November, December, sort of to coalesce into here's what we would like to tell you. Is that true?
Yes.
Great questions. This is my favorite time too. I think it's a lot of fun to look at a new biennium of goal setting and see how we can get our input considered by council. So it'll definitely be a conversation. So yeah, I'm going to resume here with just how do we get all this incredible body of work done. So that is something that we do through regular meetings and working groups. Our regular meetings are right now the second Tuesday of every month from 4 to 6 p.m. When we have new folks come on, we usually reevaluate that as a committee. So we can do that again in September and just make sure that time's still working for everyone and see if we need to reissue a doodle poll to figure out a better one. During those meetings, the agendas are set by the chair as with input from the NLA. So if there's topics of interest that need to be put on an agenda, that's something that can be brought up during meetings. The other way that we get work done, especially if it's a larger body of work like the land use education plan was, we can form working groups. That's a few members of each committee. It has to be under a quorum, so under 7 people from the committee can join these working groups for a specific interest. So you can see on there, those are working groups that we have had in the past. Our outreach and engagement talked a lot about surveys. How do we get input from community members on these big issues? Our land use working group was part of that land use project. Policies and procedures is another group that kind of makes sure that our guidelines are complete and that we're following them. And then when we need to make changes, we can reactivate it. and so on. So that is another way that we get work done. It's additional meetings. And so it's not a preferred way to do it, but we absolutely can, especially if there's a huge topic of interest that we need to do some work on and don't have time in those 2 hours that we get monthly. So forming a committee position, as I've mentioned a couple of times, part of being an advisory committee means that we are bringing our input to council and advising on issues that are important to our neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are really big, so we're not quite like affordable housing or the business development groups who can focus on their constituents just in those specific topics. We are neighborhoods, and that can be street safety, it can be wildfire, it can be many things. And so narrowing our focus is important in order to get the work done, because I know we all want to do so much and we have such little time. So the way that we say this is, or we, I guess, go through it, is that we prioritize the topics that we choose to pursue, and they have to be prioritized in this order. So council goals, we are the council's advisory committee, so they obviously come first. Luckily, council goals are based on community input, so we're working on projects that are important to the community. The second is the strategic plan. The NLA comes up with those projects, those main things that are citywide concerns that we want to work on. And then we have the opportunity to do that through those I guess spaces in time when we're not working on council stuff. And then the third is community concerns. So that's often the category that gets last on the list, and we have to really take it throughout the year as we consider it for our next strategic plan setting. And every once in a while, we have room open up where we can talk about these topics. So I wanted to provide you with this diagram of like how you choose, how we do that as a committee, how we select a topic of interest. We do that through, the agendas that are coming down through council. We're doing it through our own strategic plan that we've already outlined. We are taking community input, and we have public comment at every NLA meeting. And then representative reports. So I mentioned these yesterday, but these are reports at every single meeting. You as a representative have 2 to 3 minutes to talk about what is on the mind of your neighborhood association, particularly, especially if you think that it's a matter of citywide concern. So that's your opportunity to bring up issues that you're hearing from your boards and your members to the committee to see if there's more people that are having those same issues. Then we go and we gather information. So that can be done through work sessions with our city council or planning commission. Work sessions are usually before a public hearing. It gives us an opportunity to sit and learn about the projects that are being proposed and what's being proposed. And we can bring that information back to the committee. We have liaison assignments. So committee members have the opportunity to attend other meetings if they're relevant to our work, and we can assign liaisons. I think right now we have a neighborhood association roundtable liaison. So that's someone that's going to the NART meetings outside of the NLA and hearing what they're having to say, and then bringing that back to the NLA. We have people who have been on the sounding board to House Our Neighbors, which was talking about shelter code and where we're going to put shelters in the committee. So they were able to, or in the city, and they were able to offer their input through that process. So we always have those opportunities available to us, but it looks different depending on what the project is. And we don't usually know until we're going. So we often revisit liaison assignments and see who's available. Surveys and discussion prompts. So as reps, sometimes I will send out some questions that prompt you to have discussions with your board. We've done this in the past with managed shelters. So we put together about 5 questions that we wanted boards to discuss and bring back their input on. And you can choose to take that out to your members in a survey or use it at a general meeting, however you feel is appropriate to gather input so that you can come back with an informed position and take your vote feeling pretty confident that you're doing what your community wants. And then public comment opportunities. And then we deliberate and form recommendations. So you don't actually have to write anything. You just have to bring your thoughts and the work that you've done to gather input. And we talk about what we want to put forward at committee meetings. The goal is to reach a consensus. So that's hard sometimes, especially when we're divided on topics, but we have the time in these in the regular meetings to talk about that. And if we don't, then we can use working groups to form recommendations and bring them back to the committee. Sometimes I'll even call you one-on-one, and I'll do that with every single committee member so that I have an idea of where you're all coming from and I can create a position that is appropriate for the committee. And then we'll review and approve those positions. So bringing it back to everyone to react to and make sure that we're getting the proper position and strategy packaged for the NLA to then deliver to our decision makers. Okay, there's 2 more slides, so I'll move through them fast, but community concerns, this is that 3rd item that I said is hard to prioritize. I think that this is in our guidelines and procedures when you're thinking about a community topic that's not on our strategic plan, but it's come up, and that happens. Sometimes stuff comes up in the middle of the year that we didn't plan for, and we want to make room for it. There's an opportunity to do that in your representative reports. And that's how you're going to bring it to us. But these are the questions we ask that you consider before you do that. So just something to keep in mind as it's guiding your input that you're giving to the committee. And then if we do decide that it's something that we want to add to our plate, we can bring these to council through quarterly check-ins, through biannual, the goal setting that we talked about earlier. And then we also have Megan Perkins this as our council liaison right now. And we'll always have a council liaison to help us with issues like this that come up. And then the last slide, representative expectations. And this is also in the handbook, so I'm not going to go through it, but we just really ask that you try to come to the monthly meetings as much as you can. There are rules that we have. If you're not showing up, it might be a real conversation, but if you're doing your best to get there, right now they're offered as hybrid meetings, and I believe that's going to stay. So you have the opportunity to come in person, and we want you to do that. But if you need to, you can still be hybrid. I know we're in a changing time with the pandemic, and so we're being flexible with what works for you as far as showing up to meetings. Just make sure you're reading the agenda and that you're coming prepared. And then the only other thing that I really want to stress is that we are a conduit. So you're learning things that your board doesn't know about yet. And we really hope that you bring it back to your boards so that they're aware of what's happening at the city level. No one has time to attend all the public meetings that happen here. So we try to keep you as informed as we can, as quick as we can. And it never seems like enough time. But if you hear about these things in the meetings and you're communicating with your board, it's a little bit more manageable for everyone when we're trying to gather that input. All right. With that, I'm going to give you an opportunity for any questions. And if you have to take off, I definitely understand. It is 6 o'clock, so you know where to reach me.
I have another one. Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes.
Okay, good. So there's also this Envision Bend
Yeah.
thing going on. How does that interface with city council goals, planning process?
Yeah. Envision Bend is a separate independent group. They are a remit. I want to say there was a group called Bend 2030 that helped with visioning for the city of Bend. And obviously, as we approach 2030, that needed to change into another entity so that they could talk about what about the next 20 years, right? So they're a separate group. The city does sponsor them for the work that they do in figuring out what the public and the community wants. We've been in close contact with them. So we being city staff, I have talked to them and have pointed them to the neighborhood associations, helped them with contact information so that they're including you in the work that they're doing to do that envisioning process. As far as the NLA's work with that, I haven't had them attend a meeting yet or bring that to the NLA to consider as a topic. It might happen after they've wrapped up their information gathering and have more of that visioning plan. But at this point, nothing is, I guess, happening between the NLA and the Envision Bend project.
And so Envision Bend is a separate input. Let's see, the other person who does, let's see, he's working with community partners, I think you call them.
Yeah, Zavi, yes.
Is Envision Bend considered a community partner then?
Yeah, and he has been
how it-
working with them. Definitely, we both are aware of how they're trying to gather input and who they're communicating with. But yeah, like I said, it's treated as another community group. Their input will be considered along with all of ours.
Do they have a formal channel into city council?
I don't believe that it's any different, and you might know a little more.
They can come present to city council. They can write letters to city council, just like the Bend Chamber or any other separate organization. There is a request in front of the city right now to provide them some funding towards their work. And I believe, I might have this wrong, so don't quote me, but I believe the stewardship or one of the subcommittees recommended that the city approve it, the funding request, but then the whole council will have to make that decision. So
Gotcha.
that's, I mean, that's a little bit more structured or formal than some partners. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Well, I'm going to send a follow-up email so you have all the information from tonight. Hopefully I didn't scare you too much, but you have over a month to digest everything. Reach out if you have questions, and I'm here always, so I don't mind chatting with you, going to coffee. In fact, I'd like that because I don't like just meeting you virtually. So I look forward to meeting you all in person. Ross, we did get a chance to meet, but I can take you to coffee too.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Cody,
Thank
did
you.
you have anything?
No, I'm good. That was great. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I will talk to you all soon, and thanks so much. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.